This is Lead Balloons, the alchemy of unpopular opinions. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Lead Balloons, the alchemy of unpopular opinions. My name is Joel, chilling here in Dallas, talking with the smiling dude. Trent, man, how's life?
Good, feeling good, doing good. You know, spring has sprung, and it's very colorful here in Colorado. We've had some really nice sunny skies, beautiful trees, colors on the trees, and we woke up to a tiny bit of snow this morning, but it's long gone now. So that's typical April experience here in Denver.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
Down here in Texas, we only have two colors of leaves, and it's green and brown. And
that's it. Yeah,
that's all we got. And snow ain't a thing, really. Maybe once or twice a year, and the whole city just basically freaks out collectively.
Yeah.
Well, friends, we're gonna be diving into kind of a part 2 podcast. If you tuned in last week, Trent and I talked about our experiences with sports and how that shaped us, how that influenced us, how that is something that we continue to be interested in, how it impacts people and how that operates in our culture. But one part towards the end of the podcast, we started getting into something that's typically called sports psychology, which is taking psychological principles and applying them to games, to sports and athletes. And usually these are like high performers. You'll see this kind of showing up outside of major leagues and these professionals. You'll see some of this even showing up in adjacent sports. Like, for example, I met a sports psychologist when I used to work in Deep Ellum, Texas, across from the old Mavs offices. So the Mavs had all their operations there. And then when they moved to a larger facilities, they put in that space Mavs Gaming, which is these professional sports have video game teams. These are professional video game players. And there was, I think, five people on their team. They all played NBA 2K, I think is the name of the game. And there was a sports psychologist that they hired. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Wow,
I want to bring that up. He was fascinating.
Yeah.
But you'll see this kind of showing up everywhere. And hopefully what Trent and I will do here, and I'm going to really lean into Trent to make some connections here for us. We believe that some of these principles, while they generally are used to speak to professional athletes, they apply to a lot of life. So, Trent, just with that in general, what are your kind of feelings, your sentiments?
Well, can I actually? So you prompted me. Can I actually start off with a kind of a funny story? This is me being a little bit vulnerable. I can't believe I would share this.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, you'll allow it. So people who know me well know that on occasion I am subject to a digestive episode. If you catch my drift on that. So, anyways, I smell
what you're cooking.
I've always had a little bit of a touch and go stomach, and I've kind of learned what to avoid in order to take care of myself. But when I was in high school, I would have occasional episodes, and I played baseball in high school. And I was at baseball practice after school one day. I think I was probably a sophomore. I know I was a sophomore. I was 16 years old, and we were playing a scrimmage. And I'd never hit a home run over the fence. Had like inside the park home runs. I don't think I'd ever yet hit it over the fence. So we're in practice, we're in a scrimmage, and suddenly I'm like on deck, the on deck batter, and my stomach is just going crazy. I know I need to get to the bathroom, but I have to bat too. And in sports, if you admit any kind of bodily problem, everyone just totally makes fun of you.
Yep.
So anyway, I finally get up to bat, and I'm just thinking I've got to whatever I do, I have to get out of the batter's box as soon as possible because I'm immediately going to the bathroom. So I think like the first pitch came in. I was like, if it's anywhere near the strike zone, I'm swinging. I just have to get out of here. So the pitcher throws a strike, and I swung at it, ended up hitting the ball. First home run ever over the fence in practice. And so anyway, I didn't even care. I was not interested in hitting. I wasn't trying to hit a home run, nothing. I just wanted to go to the bathroom. So I had to run around. So I first, second, third, and hit home base, and right when I hit home base, I just kept running right past home base through the dugout up into the. I didn't say anything to anybody, and everyone was just like, "What the heck is
Oh
going
my
on, man?"
gosh.
So I went and did my whole business and all that. But it was, I looked back at that moment because I could be somewhat of a nervous, self-sabotaging
Sure.
athlete, and of course, everybody gets nervous and ruins their chances of performing really well. And it was so amazing to me that in that moment, I was able to achieve like peak athletic performance on the baseball diamond. As a hitter, hitting a home run is the best thing that you can do and the hardest thing you can do. And I had done it. I wasn't even trying. I wasn't, there was nothing in my mind at that moment about proper swing technique or
Yeah.
anything. I was just trying to hit a ball. I thought that was crazy, right? Anyway, that's a story. That's I guess I bring up that story, one, because it's funny, and number two, because it was a moment that it's a moment that I've looked back to,
Sure.
and not just for the sake of sports, but we all want to sort of like find the zone and achieve peak performance in work, in our relationships, when we're with a group of friends and we're trying to be, life of the party, whatever it is, or we're engaged in a hobby. We want to achieve that place of peak performance, and yet it seems so elusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like what are some of your thoughts, Joel, on why achieving it seems so straightforward. If you just do X, Y, and Z, you can achieve peak performance, but it is the most elusive place to be. Could you talk to us about why it's tough, and maybe also make reference to flow if you want to talk more about flow
Sure.
states and so
Yeah,
forth?
absolutely. First, let me say that your story reminds us of a important song that I learned when I was young. When you're
Oh god,
running up to first and you feel you're about to burst, diarrhea,
diarrhea,
diarrhea. When you're
diarrhea,
sliding into third and you lay a juicy turd, diarrhea. And
diarrhea.
more relevant to you when you're sliding into home and your pants are full of foam, bro. I think that song was written about you.
It must have been, man. It must have been. Hey, bada. Swing batter.
Uh huh. Your question is interesting because you're right. For whatever reason, regardless of what we know about self sabotage and these sorts of things, people really still struggle with this. They really struggle with it. And I think it's largely because of just a kind of a level of self consciousness that we have. We tend to be very self conscious people. What are people thinking about me?
Mm.
Am I doing well? Am I doing poorly? And we're constantly evaluating ourselves and grading ourselves. And a lot of people say, well, I get in my head. What does that mean? That usually means you got all these machinations going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you just told a story there was completely released all the machinations. Like those were completely off the radar, and you were just focused on the moment and just in that moment, just trusted your body to do what it knows what to do. And that is a lot of sports psychology. And you mentioned flow. So one of the ideas around sports psychology is the principle of how relaxation and concentration can come together. And this comes from you said the guy it's I don't even know how to say his last name. It's so long. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, something like that. I butchered it. I know I did, but you look it up,
Oh.
and you guys will also try to pronounce it, and you'll butcher it too. But he popularized the idea of flow, which is basically when we get deep focus. Not only does that create happiness for an individual, it
Mhm.
creates higher performance. It's basically the idea of being fully present in the moment. And you're not worried about what you've done in the past. You're not worried about what will happen in the future. You're just fully there in the moment. And they call this a state of flow that you can get into. I'm just curious about you, Trent. What do you know of this idea, and how would you apply it to sports and beyond?
Well, I think you've introduced it correctly. I mean, I guess what I understand about flow, it's a place where time slows down. Time is
Mm,
not even a factor. You're not even really aware of time. Generally, you feel very happy. You feel very relaxed. It's in sports, like in basketball, they might say someone's got the shooter's hand or the hot touch or whatever. They can't miss. I think you and I talked about that last week. You're talking about your basketball friend, but yeah, the person they cannot miss. That it seems to be, and we could. I'll bracket this because maybe we can come back to it. But the concept of wu-wei or non-action or effortless action, almost like you feel like you're not even really doing anything. Maybe I'll relate it again to baseball. When you do hit a home run, there's a different feeling than even when you hit like a line drive or when you hit a pop-up or something. It feels clean. It feels you feel like everything works perfectly. So that's what I understand about flow state. That's not very exhaustive. Can you take it a little bit further than I've taken it?
Well, I was just thinking about, to use a sports analogy, and I would love for you to kind of think about where could this apply to things beyond sports. So
yeah,
I remember when I was a youth pastor, when you work in the church world, there are always golf tournaments happening all the time. People are raising money. And so as a youth pastor, I did one of these ones where we all raised money to play 100 holes of golf. So these are a bunch of youth pastors in my state, and we're raising for a particular ministry. And I got people to like pay, when people pay per mile that you run or pay for whatever, people pay per hole I played. And I played 100 holes in one day, and it was just me and another guy. And you just go, I mean, that's a lot of rounds of golf.
Wow.
And let me tell you, by the third, fourth round, I was just in the flow. I would go up to the tee, I put it down, I pull up my driver, and just go right down the middle every time. Every time. I think I shot one of my best scores was in the sixth round that I played. And I shot like 2 over par, which I almost never do. And I was hitting my driver off the ground. I was sinking chips. It was crazy. And I'm going fast. I'm playing like speed golf, basically. And I'm not caring. I'm not keeping track of what I've scored. I'm just writing it down and forgetting and moving on because there's just so many holes. What's the point of keeping score? And I think that's one of the things that often gets in, when I play golf, the thing that gets me off track so quickly is like, oh, I'm playing well. If I continue to do this, I could achieve this. And I start getting into the future rather into the present. And immediately I start playing worse. And so it's just very interesting to me how when we take ourselves out of the present, we disrupt the flow state.
Well, I mean, so what you've shared and what I shared about my baseball experience at practice and hitting that home run, the common thread there is like not caring. For you, you were probably so focused on just getting through it. And maybe your body was even tired too.
Yep.
That your body didn't have enough energy to devote to all of the little mental games and the wondering about whether you can do better and am I using the right technique here. You were just playing golf. You were just trying to get through it and having fun and doing whatever. But caring intensely and white knuckling it, those were absent. If I can take this discussion a little bit towards like the world of performance, artistic performance, the singer Pink did a performance at the Grammys, and I think it was in 2010. And I believe the name of the song is, oh gosh, have you ever, Glitter in the Air. Glitter in the Air by Pink.
Got it. Nice.
Everybody should go and watch the video on YouTube. Pink, Grammys, Glitter in the Air. Well, she does an acrobatic performance while she's singing. So she walks out onto the stage and down this little pathway. And then they drop from the ceiling the silks. So she does her acrobatics, and they like at one point they like dunk her in water. They bring her back up and they spin her around, and she's spraying water on everybody in the crowd. It's a really, really beautiful performance. But what's interesting is when she first comes out, like when the song is starting and she walks out from backstage, you can hear the nervousness, the tightness in her voice.
Yeah.
And then as it progresses, once she gets into the silks and she's spinning around, you can sense that her voice relaxes. And she
Uh-huh.
actually was talking about that performance in an interview. And she said, I don't think I've ever sounded better as a singer than when I was up in the silk spinning around. And she says, the reason that I think that I've never sounded better is my mind was completely focused, not on singing, but on just like staying alive and not doing something stupid
Not
up in the air
dying.
as I'm
Yeah.
spinning, not dying as I'm 20 feet up in the air. And I thought that's exactly right. So when your mind is not, I mean, you have to be focused enough on something, but when you can go into enough, you've done enough practice and preparation to where you can sort of autopilot
Sure.
some of the main activities, and then your mind can go to another facet of the performance,
Mm-hmm.
then somehow that portion of you is sort of able to relax. So
Mm-hmm.
there's flow state in the sense of, you've talked about like being fully absorbed in the moment, meaning like it's almost like you've merged with the moment. You
Yeah.
don't know about your life before or after this. You are only in this moment. So there's that aspect of flow. But then there's the other aspect of flow, and maybe this isn't even flow, but there's the other aspect of peak performance, which we, I think, have been able to identify, is when you somehow get caught up with another aspect of the task, be it the physically demanding portion, or
Mm-hmm.
just grinding through it, or you've got, in my case, you have like a real health, immediate health concern. Your mind goes to that other thing, and another portion of your brain can relax and do the thing that it knows
Yeah.
how to do. But then how do you reverse engineer this stuff? How do you say, okay, these are the ingredients to achieving peak
Yeah.
performance? But then how do you deploy your effort and intention when those things seem to be counterproductive?
I mean, you could probably write a book about hitting home runs requires squeezing your sphincter, because
That's right. Yeah.
that's the magic
Yeah.
bullet, right?
Yeah.
I think that people do try to duplicate it with these little, dumb sayings. If you do this, you do that, but really, it's a psychology issue. And you had mentioned to me, uh, I think it's the guy you listened to, Adam Phillips, was talking about absorbing yourself into time. When you can absorb yourself, that there's you kind of like hit a different like rhythm, right?
Mm. Yeah. You want me to say more about that?
Please.
Well, yeah, Adam Phillips is one of my favorite psychologists. He's a psychoanalyst, and he's a writer. I guess I should say he's one of my favorite writers. But he will often do lectures, and at the end of the lecture, he will do a Q&A. And during the Q&A, he got onto the topic of absorption, and he was talking about how it might be better to be absorbed by your life, be absorbed into your life or activities in your life, than to be good at something. Not
Mm,
as if we wouldn't want to be good, but that might be more interesting. Like, you could be really good at something that you hate, but you may never
mm,
be absorbed by that thing. Whereas paradoxically, if you do get absorbed in something, you're very likely to be become
yeah,
great at that thing.
sure.
It would be very difficult to be truly absorbed in something and not become great at it.
Yeah. What are
So I
some
think,
things that you do that capture you in terms of absorption? Like, I think for me, I
yeah,
was just kind of listening to you. Like, when I do yard work or gardening, I just get into that rhythm and I will just do it. My body's tired, but I enjoy it. I love cultivating my outdoor space. Um, Sometimes I can get absorbed with a movie or a video game or something like that, and I'm not thinking about other things. I'm just fully there, and I don't know fully what that does to my nervous system and everything, but my guess is I'm pretty relaxed, and I'm guessing that that's a positive thing for my organs and my brain and my whole
yes,
body, like being in that state where I'm just enjoying, or like I'll be doing a watercolor. Sometimes I do some art. Me and my wife will do
Mm-hmm.
art nights, and I'm just in it. And like for a good hour and a half, I am focused on just creating lines and colors on a piece of paper. So I'm curious about you. Do you have things that you get absorbed into?
Yeah. So a couple examples. One would be for me one of the things that I love in life, and I know you do too. So this is probably fit in your bucket too. But great conversations.
Mm.
I love going to a party where there's like 10, maybe like 10 to 12 people there,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 15, not more than that. And then I'll tell you why, because what'll happen is people will start off the party and they're kind of everyone's standing up and milling around and small talk and blah, blah. Gradually people start to sort of subcongregate
Yeah.
into smaller spaces. You'll have 5 people here playing a game and 2 people here, and then kind of 4 people there, whatever it is. And gradually those will kind of like settle in,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and you'll end up being in a group. I love this when I'm in a group and there's maybe like 4 or 5 people, and we just get into a great conversation that goes hours and hours and hours. It's really, there's laughter, there's deep thought. The people are making fun of each other. There's just a great topic that you go down. We would talk about great movies or books that you've read, or funny stories. I really really love that. So that's kind of a social flow
Mm.
state
Yeah.
that I would describe. But then with my work, and maybe this is a little bit of a it's kind of where stress meets flow, but maybe it's a EU
Yeah.
stress, good stress. And that would be sometimes I get assigned to do or asked to do projects that are very, very challenging. One that I did last year, I think it was last summer. It was a railing inside somebody's house, and it was called. The product was that those little braided cables that kind of pass through the
Yeah.
vertical rods, and
Yeah.
then they terminate at these posts. And it was all metal posts and metal posts and beams, hand railings, and we had to like do metal cuts and
Yeah.
45-degree angle, all different angle cuts. It was very difficult work, extremely challenging, but it was one of those where because it was so challenging, I was completely immersed in it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it felt stressful when I was thinking about going to work each day, but in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, it didn't feel really
Yeah.
that way. It just felt it would be weird to even say what it felt like because you were part of that activity.
Yeah.
And after I got done, there was a great sense of satisfaction, even though it was very, very challenging. So it's
Yep.
one of those weird things where it's like you don't want to start it, but then once you're into it, you're into it. And there's nothing. If someone would say, "Are you enjoying this or hating this?" You'd be like, "What are you even talking about?"
Yep.
Those words
You're
don't
not
even.
even there's the commentary's turned off, right? You're no longer
That's
like
right.
inner dialogue is just off, and you're just in a state of intrinsic motivation, and that's just
That's
what's
exactly
happening.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that might differ from, the like in sports, generally you're really excited or you're really happy to be there and you're truly like enjoying it. But if you could get inside somebody's brain and body in that moment, they probably wouldn't even maybe even use those terms, right?
Yep. Yep. Deeply focused. And I
Yeah.
think about that those kinds of things relate and overlap with a lot of relationships. People really struggle staying in the present with their
Yeah.
partners or friends, and they are worried about something that's happened in the past that and afraid that it might happen again, or
Yeah.
they're thinking about where is this going all the time, and all of that keeps them out of being fully present there. And
Mm.
when we're not fully present in a relationship, I know I've done this many times. I've violated this principle many times. It People feel it. You're not
Yeah.
fully there, and it just feels less connected. And I don't know how to measure that with science, but there's tons of research that talk about being in the present with your partner or with your friends is a real powerful gift in terms of others feeling seen and heard and listened to
Mm.
and acknowledged. And it deeply impacts the way people relate.
Yes, yes. We want to have people's full attention. And when we don't have it, oftentimes what's so annoying is we know that the person's brain is somewhere else. We
Yep.
know that there's other problems that they're thinking about. We're like, is there something about me that's not entertaining enough right now?
Yeah.
So it's a
Uh-huh.
great gift when you get somebody's full attention, because it does make you feel like you're worth being paid attention to, you
Yep.
know? That's, I think, one thing that I've tried to learn in my life is, if I can't, i- two things. If I can't give somebody my full attention, I try to let them know. Like, listen,
Mm.
I'm really distracted.
Yep.
I just got home from work or whatever it is. I can't give you my full attention right now. Just give me a little bit of time and I can come back to this.
Yeah.
And then if I sense that I'm not getting somebody's full attention, I've gotten better, I think, at saying to that person, hey, it seems like you've got something else going on right now, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine, but I want to be fully with you and you with me, and so let's reconvene. So that's kind of a demand that I make of myself and other people these days, because life is too short for distracted moments, man. If
Yeah.
you're never present in moments, you essentially aren't even living. You're just always in future
Mm-hmm.
moments, or past moments. So
Well, that kind of like
yeah.
transitions to another idea that sports psychology brings up, and it's been around for a long time, and the word that's often used is visualization. And this is
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
idea that if you can visualize the free throw going in, if you can visualize
Yep.
the putt going in, if you can visualize spiking the volleyball, jumping and spiking, whatever it may be, if you can kind of see that can help make it happen. That's the idea. Can
Mm-hmm.
help make it happen, and it makes sense to me that that could be true in some ways. So tell me about where you see that is kind of verified as visualization, something that you see, oh, it makes sense to you that it helps in this way, and where does it cross a line and become more like magical thinking?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Admittedly, I never really delved too deeply into those practices when I was in sports, and I think I was vaguely aware of them in when I
Mm-hmm.
was in high school, and I just didn't really. None of my coaches guided us in those practices, so it was never something I was coached, and I just didn't know how to guide myself into it.
Mm-hmm.
I would think because athleticism, physical movement is about signals sent from the brain to the
Yeah.
body, that the more that you can practice seeing yourself in those moments, even if you're not, like, you're shooting a basketball, even if you're not actually shooting the basketball, but you're imagining the moment. Okay,
Sure.
I'm on the elbow and I'm shooting the three and it
Yeah.
goes in. Even if you're not doing the activity, there's got to be, I would imagine there's fairly demonstrable benefits to going through those motions in your mind and imagining what success looks like, what it looks like when the putt goes in, you know, uh, um, when you're able to make contact or throw the right pitch or whatever it is. So, yeah, I think though that what happens, Joel, is, and I heard a good scientist named Donald Hoffman, who's done a lot of work on, like, consciousness. Part of why I like him so much is he says my work, my contribution, my research contribution, is all about uh, communicating clear statements that
Mm.
people then are able to clearly agree or disagree with. So
Mm.
I want to know whether or not I'm wrong, essentially, is what I'm saying. So I want to speak in such a clear, articulate way that my ideas can be rejected. You know,
Oh.
I think sometimes that people speak in ways about flow states or about peak performance or achieving success. They speak in ways that I can't really tell what they're talking about, and I don't know if I can agree or disagree. So, like, people will say things like, I'm manifesting, I'm going to make $1 million, and I'm starting to manifest that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure what I think I know what you mean, but I'm not exactly sure. They might say, I'm sending positive energy into the universe. What do you mean by energy? What do you mean by the universe?
Yeah.
Do you mean you're sending literal physical vibrations into the cosmos? Okay, do you have any reason to believe that that would produce anything worthwhile? But the whole so what I would say
Yeah.
about the manifesting thing is if somebody's saying like I'm going to make $1 million, I'm going to make $10 million and I'm going to move to the Canary Islands and I've got a house and I'm going to have a house there and it's going to look
Yeah.
like this. So I would say, well, that is a great vision. That is something that you're seeing in the future. But manifesting it might be something like being able to identify in your mind what are the steps that are going to get you there. So I'm manifesting a conversation that I'm going to have with a person that I would like to be my mentor. And this person I've identified, I'm going to have a conversation with her. I'm going to sit down in her office. She's going to ask this. I'm going to say this. And as a result of that conversation, she's going to agree to be my mentor if for business. And then, boom. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a great way to manifest. But if you're manifesting, I'm going to manifest something, meaning like you're talking about, it's just somehow I'm going to do some mental cogitation and it's going to create this reality. I'm not sure if I can sign off on that because I don't really know what that is.
Yeah.
What is that
I
thing?
can't sign off on it at all. What's interesting is, what you're kind of talking about, it's so popular in what's called pop psychology and pop culture. These ideas, which are rooted in some truth, they get kind of twisted and turned into just kind of laziness. And some of it is really cool. I know that, some of these like woo-woo books, really popular one was The Secret, made popular by Oprah. There was another one I read called The Celestine Prophecy, and there's a couple there too. And they kind of make they take these really practical psychological ideas and they turn them into almost like magic spells, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way a lot of Christians turn the Bible into magic spells. It's just that's there's some rooted truth there, but like, what are you doing? That's like the person who's sitting in their couch going, I'm manifesting become a millionaire, and they don't do anything. It's like that's not how that works. Visualization improves action. It doesn't create action. So that's what I think is the distinction there. When we visualize or manifest, like where that is true is where that kind of opens up our possibilities, maybe helps us drop some of our mental constraints. It maybe helps us see the world with a little more optimism. All that's powerful. But if it is not also married to practical action, then it leads to nothing. So what does it mean to send positive vibes in the universe? I'll say that sometimes. And I love that challenge that you offer there, because I'm like, yeah, what do I fucking mean by that? What am I saying? I was like, sending you good vibes. What does that mean?
I'll use words. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'll use words and I'll think to myself, what do I actually mean? What am I actually trying to say there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think what I mean, when I mean by there is like, I have positive intentions. And my intentions are to help you however I can. If there's something you need, please let me know. I'm sending good vibes your way because I want you to know that I love you. And I want you to know through this communication that I am willing to do with action things that support you. Right now, though, I'm putting the ball in your court, whether you want that or not. And that's, I think, what I mean. But that little shortcut phrase that I use doesn't necessarily communicate all that. And so that's what I love your challenge there. When it comes to visualization, though, I'm curious, do you ever employ that in ways that showing up at work or showing up in your relationships?
Yeah. I think that, and this may not be a deliberate practice, but I think with my relationships, I think that I will oftentimes, and maybe this isn't even good to do, I don't know, but a lot of times I will imagine how conversations are going to go and what I want to say. Then I'll also do like a post-mortem after a conversation, and I'll kind of go through that again. Like, what did I like about what I said? Yes, I overanalyze and pre-analyze and project and predict and all these things, but I will often really go through a conversation and say, I could have said this a little bit better. Or, I mean, recently, a thing that I've been imagining myself doing, and again, this is not like a regular years-long habit, something I've come to more recently, but like I'm trying to be better at listening. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to be better at withholding my counsel, my advice, my opinion, my commentary, taking in what the person is saying, and really finding the joy in the liberation in the knowledge that I'm not responsible for that person's life.
Yeah.
And because I'm not, I can simply just be there to hear what they're saying. And they get to be responsible for their life. It's like been kind of a fun realization. I know this is off topic of flow, but maybe it will enable me, because what I have found is, I guess what have been doing for a long time in conversations is the equivalent of like white knuckling it
Yeah.
in baseball, where you grab real tight and you're
Uh-huh.
trying so hard to do the right thing. And in conversations, maybe I'm trying too hard to direct
Mm.
people into the paths that I think are best for them,
Yep.
instead of just saying, tell me who you are. What's your life about? I
Mm-hmm.
can agree or I can disagree with what you're doing, but I'm just here to be present for you. It's a new space for me. It's a new challenge, and it has been good, because it makes me realize there's a newfound freedom in knowing that I don't have to control people's lives. I don't have to be I don't have to be interested, really. I mean, the challenge is for them to keep me interested, but I'm just there to hear about their lives, and I'm not there to try to control it or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't know if that rings any,
It
if that
does.
sets you off in any ways, but
You got me thinking about a conversation that I had planned with my oldest daughter, who's a teenager. She's just turned 17, and in the past couple of years, as most adolescent females, there's a lot they're going through, and a lot of hormones being dumped in their body, a lot of stress, social stress that's put on their lives, a lot of expectations from society. So a lot of times, this age, girls can feel pretty prickly at times, as
yeah.
they're kind of navigating their own insecurities. And so I was trying to really set up some connection time with her, because we had some butted heads in a couple different ways, and um, and I planned like a date. We're going to go to the zoo here in Dallas. And I set my intentions in my mind and visualized even, I am going to do exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to be a listener, because I have made plenty of errors with her, with giving unsolicited advice. I'm a former pastor. I know how to sermonize, right? My brain,
Yes.
she can say 6 syllables. My brain goes to some lesson I want to teach her. And all that does is make her feel unseen and not
Hmm.
acknowledge where she's at. And so I know that's a habit of mine that I'm trying to change. So I thought about this as like,
Mm.
Joel, we're gonna let her lead the conversation. And there were moments
Mm.
here and there where I added a little commentary, but I kept it very light. Most of the time, it was just let her talk. And what miracle of miracles she did? She just shared. And it was such a beautiful opportunity for me just to be a container for
Mm.
everything she
Mm.
was thinking and feeling. And I was really proud of how that
Mm.
went. And I think my preparation for it put me in a state of like ease, rather than trying to like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I was just, no, I'm just gonna, and if I messed up, I didn't like judge myself
Mm.
about it. That's another thing I want
Mm.
to talk about. Trent, so one
Mm.
thing that athletes have to do is cope with either mistakes or injury. One of those is kind of like regret. Oh, I messed up, and that can mess with you. Or they have limitations with their bodies, and they're worried that they might get injured again. Learning how to cope with the feelings that come up around that kind of stuff. I'm curious if you've ever had to like deal with coping with mistakes that you made and how that impacts your confidence.
Yeah. There's a number of ways I could go with that question. Can you narrow it down a little bit
Sure.
more, because I could maybe take it in several directions, or maybe you want me to, I don't know, but do
Well,
you
let's
want me to
start.
talk about Go ahead.
Let's start with physical injury.
Yes. Yeah. I would say when I was in high school, I had multiple ankle injuries
Hmm.
when I played football, and it was like I think it was my sophomore, maybe my sophomore, and then no, it was my sophomore and then my senior year. I had ankle injuries that kept me out for probably 3 or 4 games, and football wasn't the most important sport to me. But I guess the hardest part of that was it didn't really affect my confidence necessarily, but it made me very very frustrated to just
Yeah.
have to miss games,
Yeah.
and you just feel it does affect your confidence in the sense that you tie your worth and your value to as an athlete to your performance. I mean, if you don't perform well as an athlete, especially as a professional athlete, you aren't valuable. I mean,
Sure.
as in terms of your monetary contribution to that organization, you're not valuable. So, but this is, I think we talked about this in our sports podcast. We talked about everyone having to face that moment
Yeah.
where your body lets you down, your mind lets you down. There was a baseball player, and I think his name was Chuck Knobloch. I might be getting it wrong, but I think it was Chuck Knobloch. He played, I think, in the 80s and 90s, and he was a very good, I think, second baseman, but he got to a point where he literally couldn't make accurate throws anymore.
Yeah.
It just something went off. He couldn't do it anymore, and he
Mm-hmm.
had to retire from the game because you can't be an inaccurate thrower of the baseball and keep playing. And so everybody has to face that moment, whether you're in your teens, your 20s, or your 40s, where your body won't cooperate anymore. And I think that being prepared for that moment, of course, that could translate to many other aspects of life. How do we confront it? Basically, when our bodies start to age, and those are things that we all have to confront,
Yeah.
when you start to lose your hair, like I have, and these kinds of things, you have to, and Joel still has his wonderfully thick head of hair, you piece of shit. But we all have to face those moments, yeah.
What you kind of bring up there is like accepting the limitations of life, things that we're not in control of. I'll circle back to that sports psychologist who worked for Mavs Gaming, and because I was so fascinated, I would sit and talk with them. I was like, "What is it that you help them do? They're sitting in a chair playing video games. How do you? What principles or effects do you have on their performance?" And he talked about some things that were very valid. Like he talked about in the game that is NBA what two or NBA 2K, I think is what it's called again. And there are times that it has it built in there. It doesn't matter if your timing is perfect and you hit the buttons and the joystick in the right perfect combination.
Yep.
The game has built into it that you're going to miss a shot here and there. It's just going to happen. Even if you perform perfectly, it's going to happen. And what tends to happen then for the gamer is they get extraordinarily frustrated and maybe even angry. And their body gets filled with adrenaline and they're frustrated and they are taken out of the moment of flow because all of a sudden they're making judgments about what just happened. And he talks about how he helps them just accept that. That's going to happen. It makes me think of Golf's Not a Game of Perfect, the book I mentioned in the sports podcast. And this sports psychologist talks about like even the most elite golfers on the planet will hit bad shots every round, at least one or at least a couple of them. Even when we're in our perfect state of being, we will never be perfect. And so I think what that kind of touches on is accepting that there's going to be limitations, there's going to be mistakes, and not allowing that to then create more mistakes or more lower performance because we're so caught up by this thing that happened.
So I want to, since you brought up golf, so I get to blame you. So we got to talk about Tiger Woods now, because I want to mention maybe two moments. Have you been a watcher of golf?
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if I saw this on replay or saw it live, but I think I'm almost certain it was at Pebble Beach, and I think it might have been the 2000 U.S. Open. Tiger
Okay.
Woods is on a hole it abuts the ocean,
Yep.
and he hits his drive right into the water.
Yep.
And I remember watching it. I was like, oh, he's going to pull out like a 1-iron or a
Yeah.
3-wood or whatever. And he's just going to play it safe. Nope. Drops the ball down again. Takes a huge full fast swing. Hits it right down the middle of the fairway.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's somebody who's built differently and
Yep.
been trained differently. That's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, oh, I know. He probably was like, I know exactly what I did wrong. I'm not going to do that again. And he just went for it. But
Mm-hmm.
that was an example of somebody who is able to make a mistake and throw it away and move on immediately.
Yep.
I was blown away. That I want to let you comment on that, but I also want to mention something else because you could give me more insight because you played so much golf and
Yeah.
I've played a little bit of golf. In golf, you have, and this is much more than in other sports because every time you hit a shot, particularly with like putting, you have not forever, but you have a good amount of time to prepare for that shot. You on the green, you read the green. There's all these factors. You know about the moisture on the putting surface, the
Yep.
grain of the grass, where the water is. It's going to move towards the wind, everything.
You're saying all the right
And
things. Yep.
so you have to do all of that head work, and then you have to set yourself up, and then you have to decide how hard you're going to hit it, and then once you've decided that, then you have to execute.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those had to be correct decisions mentally, and then you have to execute it physically. I remember Tiger Woods hitting in 2005 at the Masters. He hits the chip shot. Remember, he's off the green, and I can't remember what hole it was, but I remember the commentator said he'll be lucky if he gets this within the ball mark.
Yeah.
He thought that he was going to hit a shot that would have taken his ball farther away from the pin than it already was off the green. Mm-hmm. And then he hits the shot and makes this big freaking U-turn, comes back down, and then sets down right by the cup, and you see the little Nike logo, and it sits there for like a second, and then plops in, and he goes crazy. I think what made that I remember watching that live. I know exactly where I was.
Wow.
I became a Tiger fanatic in that moment. I think what made it so amazing was I think everybody there, even if there was a little bit of luck involved, everyone in there probably felt in their bones that he had to have just planned it that way. He knew every single rotation of that ball. He knew exactly where it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about him that's different to the point where that whole chain of preparation in his mind and the physical execution in many moments in his career was utterly flawless.
Yeah.
Down to the grain of grass.
Yeah.
What is going on there?
Well, there is, I think there's some deep skill. There's some deep instinct, the ability to read certain situations. That is something that everyone can cultivate, but not everyone starts on the same floor.
Yeah.
Some people have a higher floor, and when they cultivate it, it just makes a much bigger difference. And so they kind of see the matrix, so to speak, in ways that other people can't. So I do think there's some of that. And, Tiger Woods is probably the closest I've seen in terms of like the grit that you would see with a Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Just super gritty and very mentally focused and tough. And when you talked about him at Pebble Beach, it makes me think of the Ted Lasso quote, be a goldfish, where it's just short-term memory. They teach this to
yes, yeah.
They teach this to NFL players, like receivers if they drop a ball, or cornerbacks if they get burned. Forget that happened. They're not saying don't learn from it. They're going to be watching film a couple days later, and their coach will point out where they messed up. But in the moment, that is not helpful. It is not helpful. It actually changes your state of being. Like, forget that happened. Get back in the moment and trust the work that you've done to prepare. It's so powerful. And, when we take our mistakes with us, it is just one of those things that can haunt us. I was thinking about Poonam and I, my wife and I, were at dinner. We were doing like some of those conversation starter kind of questions, just connecting. And one of the questions was was the most the most embarrassed you've ever felt, or most embarrassed thing you've ever done. And I related to her like a conversation that I had in 10th grade. That when I recall it, I don't recall it often, but when I do recall it, I just said some very like haphazard things to someone who was older that I cared about, and they just came across very inconsiderate, actually judgmental and rude. And I felt so much. I still feel I can re-access the shame I felt when I was that age and said those things. And it reminds me of an old proverb that I'd heard actually from my wife, who goes through these meditation retreats, and when the teacher shared this story, it's two older monks are walking through China, and they're walking in the wilderness, and just kind of like following their vows. They're very devout. They follow a lot of strict rules, and they start walking by the river, and they see a beautiful woman that is on one shore trying to get across the river without getting wet. And the older monk then walks over, picks up the woman, throws her over his shoulder, and wades her across the river, drops her at the other side, and wades back. The younger monk is shocked by what this older monk did. And they walk together for a while, and this younger monk is just fuming, and eventually just says, "How could you do this? You know the vows we've taken. You know that this is not something we are allowed to do." And the older monk said, "I dropped that woman off at the other side of the river. Why are you still carrying her?" And it's like one of those things that psychologically we can literally let go of things, but for whatever reason, it's so hard for us to do.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can top that.
There's no topping it. I'm just curious about your thoughts in terms of like letting go of things, man. It's so hard.
Yeah. It definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely an overthinker and overanalyzer, and I'll carry things with me for a long time. Here is where I think becoming a temporary narcissist can actually serve you well, to the point where maybe not caring is maybe not caring what other people think.
Sure.
And just not caring is the right way. Sometimes by not caring, you achieve the results that you wanted anyway. It's really why it really is paradoxical that way. But sometimes, and we didn't go into the concept, but there is that Taoist concept of wu wei, which can be translated as like not forcing, or there's even the phrase "do nothing and nothing is left undone." That sometimes you mess up, you F up, and you're just able to just let it go and not care so much about every single moment in your life.
Dude.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything beautiful to say about that, man. I think you said it well.
I mean, if I was your like life coach, Trent,
yeah,
and you're telling me all about your overthinking, and you're telling me about your analytical mind, I say, bro, there's only one thing you have to do: eat a bunch of beans all the time, and constantly be squeezing your butt so you don't shit yourself. And your performance in life and love and work is just going to be stellar.
I know, man. How can you cultivate that sort of not caring to get the result that makes you really excited? You want the result, but the more you care about it, you can't get it done.
No, man. You got to be distracted by mitigating sharts. That's how you
I think
that's
so.
how you get there.
Yeah. Oh God, man. Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this conversation?
No, it's fun. It's really fun to think about, because I think this discussion about flow is part of a larger conversation that we all want to have about like human happiness. I mean, ultimately we want to be going back to Adam Phillips, we want to be absorbed in our lives. The people who come as patients into his office are people who cannot find ways to be absorbed. They're constantly distracted with trauma, with grief, with things that are going on, with things that they cannot fix in their own personal lives. And what we all probably really want is to be absorbed in our lives. And so this is a discussion about how we get to those places, because that's what I think probably matters the most to any of us. We just want to we want to make the most of our lives and be here for as much of it as possible. That's why people are even willing to endure, all of us are willing to endure great amounts of pain, because we think that somehow life is worth being here for. So I think that's what this conversation is about, largely.
That's so beautifully said. Thanks for sharing that, buddy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been a good one.
Okay, friends. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Lead Balloons, the alchemy of unpopular opinions. I got unpopular right there. Trent, how can they find us? How can they interact with us?
So find our website at leadballoonspod.com. That's kind of our hub where you can find out more about us, read some more blog posts, and all of our episodes are there. You can email us at leadballoonspodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our YouTube channel, which is just under Lead Balloons Podcast, and you can find our episodes also audio on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Awesome. Well, thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Peace.